Well, hello and welcome to another Faith, Philosophy and Life with me, Mr. Shelton. It's great to see you again. As always, I do hope you're doing well. That sounds like I say that a lot, which I do, but I genuinely mean it because I'm a nice kind of guy. All right, moving on very quickly before we go there. God exists. Okay, this half term we are thinking about some philosophy, that study of wisdom. We are going to be thinking about arguments to why God might exist, classical opinions with that, before moving on to looking at the more serious topic of evil and suffering. So we've got a lot to pack in between in this half term, and today we're going to just think about this question: God exists. What are the best arguments that you can come up with that suggest why people might say that God exists? You may not be a theist yourself, you may not believe in God, but what my atheists say is why God exists. So I'm going to give you a few moments to have a think about that while you grab your pen and paper, because here's our cheesy intro sequence. Okay, so our title today is What is Causation? What is causation? And we need to put our learning objective down, which is to explore how cause and effect may prove God's existence. Explore how cause and effect may prove God's existence. It's going to be good if you can explain what cause and effect is. It's going to be great if you can explain how cause and effect could prove the existence of God. It's going to be even better if you can evaluate if the cosmological argument for God is a good argument for God's existence or not, reaching a reasoned conclusion. Now, this is going to take you 2 lessons, okay? So expect this to half of it to be done today and half of it to be done next time. So we're not going to get everything boxed off, but what we are going to do today is we're going to have a quick think about some dominoes. We've got some information, a worksheet and a review that we are going to cover as well. So there's a lot packed in. Now, I'd like you to make a mind map for me, or a bullet point list if you would rather. Where did the world come from? Where did the world come from? Mind map or bullet point list now, please, about where you think the world came from. Let's see what you can do. As usual, pause me. Okay, so I wonder if you've got things like Big Bang, evolution, creation, aliens maybe, I don't know. So you might have come up with a list about where you may think the world came from. Some people say the world wasn't created, it just is, and it's called the steady state theory. Things have always been the way that they are. So I'm going to start by playing this to you. I'd like you to watch this and see what you think of where does this all start. Let's watch this. Okay, so the question we need to really ask is, can creation reveal God? Can the creation reveal God? And this comes from a bloke called Aquinas. Okay, so you're going to need to make a few notes of what I'm about to go through with you. Aquinas said that we can be sure that the universe exists, nothing could have come by existence by itself. So Aquinas simply says that we know things don't miraculously just appear in front of us. It just doesn't happen. Whatever happens, happens because there's been a reason why that's happened. There's been a cause as to why that's happened. So like the dominoes that we saw in that previous clip, there's always a cause and effect in the universe, and we know this to be true. So the universe couldn't have just occurred by itself. That's what Aquinas says there. And therefore, there's got to be something greater than the universe, which has brought the universe into existence. And that something, he says, is God. The argument simply could be that as a human, we can't create things better than humanity because we're limited by the fact we're humanity. So the universe is pretty vast and pretty big. Well, actually, we can't do better than that unless the thing is better than that, and the thing that created something better than that has got to be God. That's the argument. So, have a think about this. If Saffron pushes that domino over, what happens to all of them? Yep, you're quite right. They would obviously fall over, and that's because there's been a cause and there's an effect. Think about this in relation to creation and the question of existence. If God's the cause, then the effect is creation, the universe. And that brings us to the question of, well, what caused God? And that's a classic question that people ask all the time. There is a fallacy, there is a mistake with that question, because if something caused God, then your idea of God ceases to be God. Because obviously, if God's the greatest thing you can imagine, then you can't imagine anything greater than God. And if you can, then you've just redefined what you understand by the term God. So Aquinas says that there must be a first cause in the universe, something to start the whole thing off. But that thing has also got to be uncaused. That means that thing has brought everything into existence. And therefore, if something's an uncaused first cause, that must be God. Okay, so let's just make a note in our books about that. If something's the first cause that is uncaused, that is outside of cause and effect, then that thing must be God. And it makes sense. You can't have something which is caused and it be important, because everything that's caused is reliant upon something else. And that at A level would look at and use the term necessary and contingent. Contingent being terms that are relying on other thing, necessary being something we can do and we can't do without. So the key idea then is God is the uncaused creator. What we now need to do is we need to think about arguments, why this is a good argument and why this is a bad argument. So when your book, what I like to do is a little T table. On one side you're going to have this idea of something that's positive, why it's strengths, and on the other side you're going to have weaknesses. Okay, so strengths on one side, weaknesses on the other. And see if you can come up with any arguments as to why this is an argument that works or why it doesn't work. So pause me now and then come back to me. Okay, so here are some strengths then for you. Let's see if you've got these down. It explains what caused the universe to exist. We know we live in a universe of cause and effect. So actually it's a logical thing to think that we are caused by something. And also it makes sense to say that God is uncaused, because God wouldn't be the greatest thing if God was not uncaused. But then if we think about weaknesses, well, there could be no beginning of anything. There doesn't have to be a cause. Think about those diagrams that you see, which are like magical staircases that just go on for infinity. And there could also be an endless chain reaction that goes back forever. There's a story told of someone who interrupts, and this is at the start of one of Stephen Hawking's books, and says, how do you know the universe was created by God? Or by the Big Bang, actually, was the phrase used. And the physicist says, well, what are you talking about? How do you know that it's not? And she said, oh, I know it's not. And he looked at her and said, sorry? She said, I know it's not. We're on a big tortoise. And he says, you what? He says, yeah, the universe is there and then we're on a tortoise. Okay, so what's the tortoise standing on? Oh, she says, a turtle. Okay, what's the turtle standing on? Oh, another turtle. Okay, and what's that turtle standing on? Another turtle. And so on and so on. And he says, in which case, so what's the last turtle standing on? She went, there is no last turtle. The turtles just stand on turtles going on forever. And that's part of the problem of the cosmological argument, is that we like to think there's got to be a beginning, but does there have to be a beginning? David Hume says, who's a philosopher, again at A level, he would say, the universe is like a vegetable. It just is, just grows, it just does. So stop trying to read meaning for something that's not meaning. You know, another really good way of thinking about this is, imagine that you're a car, you've got to a level crossing and you're seeing a train come past you. The train's already come past you and the carriages are going and going and going and going and going. And what's at the front of that connection of all those carriages? Well, most people would say a locomotive, a train, something pulling those carriages. In reality, though, there is no locomotive at the front. The carriages have been at the top of the hill. The brakes have failed. And then the carriages just roll down the hill. You've not seen it, therefore you can't assume that that is what's happened. And just because this universe might be in one of cause and effect doesn't therefore mean that there has to be a cause for the universe. We just like to think that there is one. There's some weaknesses of this argument. So even though in some ways it's a very strong argument, this idea that God causes things and therefore we're the effect of that because we see that in the world around us, it doesn't necessarily have to be the case. So what we've done is today we've said it'd be good if we could explain what cause and effect is. Great if we could talk about how cause and effect could prove the existence of God. And even better, we could start to evaluate it. So what I'd like you now to do is, using the description below, there is a worksheet which I would like you now to access. There are some questions on that drill into what we've talked about. This is going to take you 20 minutes or so come back to me when you're done. Okay, and our last activity then today is, how can causation be used to argue that God exists? Causation being cause and effect, the argument of cause and effect. How can causation be used to argue that God exists? And is this a good argument or not, and why? I'd like you to write a response to that in your book. This is going to take you 10 minutes or so because I need a decent paragraph. As always, please photograph anything, send it through to your teachers. We would love to see it. We need to make sure that you're doing what you need to do. And I'm going to leave it there. So thanks very much for your time. Take care of yourself, stay safe, wash your hands, God bless you. I'll see you soon.